the last class we have seen that if we study the scattering at different angle, it actually gives that information about the nuclei. So we can basically have a detector which will actually detect the output, okay, the output of the scattered wave. So we have seen different terms. Let me not explain this. I think this is all clear. One of the important term is nothing but the intensity of the projectile, which will be more important. And we should know that intensity means how many particles are there, which basically crosses a unit area in unit time. So time is a very important factor. More the time, more will be the number of particles. Nt is the number of target particle, and another term that we are actually concentrating right now is on areal density, where areal density refers to number of particles per unit area. So the areal density, the unit is actually per meter square or per centimeter square, okay, or per millimeter square. It's not like a normal density of kg per meter cubed, okay. So you just need to concentrate on that. And then we saw that the number of particles which will actually be collected by the detector will actually depend on a number of factors. First, the time for which it was actually incident. This is also there in Rutherford scattering, so I think this is not something very new. D omega is the solid angle because we are considering a three-dimensional part, so we do have the solid angle involved. And I is the intensity. Just go by the definition here, and nt is the number of target particle, and that's obvious, right? So collected in the detector will also depend on how many target particles are there. More the target particle, more would be the scattering. The chances are there that more particles will be collected by the detector. So then if there is a proportionality sign, I need to replace it with a constant, and that constant is nothing but sigma, okay, function of theta and phi again. uh, we do say that it doesn't depend on theta and phi in certain cases, but you see here theta and phi will be there because whenever there is a scattering, it will be in a three-dimensional space. So it makes sense to actually consider these, okay. But then we will see that we were going to do some ideal studies here. So if we consider this, nt is nothing but nt is this number of target particles, okay, and then we can actually write it down as na into capital A, okay. So na is n by a, and then I think a gets cancelled, we just get nt back. So this I think I explained it yesterday, and then I also said that if we take up t and if you take up I, and if you just consider a, that means you are considering the number of projectile particles hitting the target. So I hope all of you have actually accepted this fact, because this is logical. Think about it and this will become a bit more clear, okay. So we actually stopped at this particular slide, and then we just wrote down the simplified equation of differential cross section. So differential cross section in general is dn divided by d sigma na into np. And the unit we have seen that if you put everything in place, it's going to be centimeter square. So this is basically a differential cross section, which actually gives me the unit of area. Now having said that, we know that the number of particles are coming and hitting, and that will actually depend on the differential cross section. But then very important part here is that how do we analyze that incoming particle? How? Okay, that's important. So what we do here is we actually do partial wave analysis. If you remember from your quantum mechanics, whenever we do have a scattering problem, okay, I think we already did this yesterday. So from here we are going to start and continue, and please keep a note, as yesterday I said that we are going to use quantum mechanics and mathematical physics, okay. So I'm not going to derive everything, but we are going to just look into this picture, okay. So this is another part of this unit, okay, where you are actually doing a partial wave analysis, okay. So you are basically doing a partial wave analysis, so please don't get confused here. We are doing a partial wave analysis, okay. So of the waves, okay, which are coming and hitting the nuclei. So we are going to do different assumptions. As we keep on doing it, I think this will become more and more clear. So let's say, for example, there is no scattering cross section. So if there is no scattering cross section, what does it mean? It simply means that the particles will actually go straight without any interaction. So that means that either the incident wave is very far from the nucleus, okay, first point, or there is no nucleus at all. We are just having a practice, okay. We are just throwing in the projectile, but we are not really having any target as of now. So there is no scattering cross section. Okay, so these words sounds technical, but try to relate it with the general idea that we have developed till now. So if we basically consider the wave function that we have from this case is nothing but e to the power ikz. I think this is something which we have done a number of times. When we say this is a e to the power ikz, we are considering this is a plane wave, okay, and it has got the value of k as root over 2me by h cut square. So if there was a potential, this would have been e minus v, right? If there was a scattering cross section, but there is no scattering cross section, so the potential is zero. Now this is something which we already know from quantum mechanics, and then k is this. So we are not diverting too much, okay, we are just on track to or with quantum mechanics so that we understand this better, okay. So I've put the sentences there, okay. I've kept it minimum, but then this is something which you need to write in your exam. Don't just write down the equation without understanding, okay, it becomes a bit difficult, okay. Now what happens is if we consider a plane wave, and if we just go back to wave optics, okay, or your class 12 knowledge of waves, okay, and we talk about wave fronts, okay, spherical wave front, cylindrical wave front, plane wave front, and so on. This plane wave is actually nothing but a sum of series of spherical waves. So you'll say that why it is a sum of series of spherical waves, because in this case we are not considering a one-dimensional picture. It is a three-dimensional picture, okay. So this waves will actually travel in all the three dimensions, okay. It will be, there will be some effect. So we need to include theta there. So it is a sum of a series of spherical waves about the origin of spherical coordinates. So we are not avoiding the spherical coordinates as of now, okay, we are continuing with it. And then basically what we do is we can write it down as e to the power I k z cos theta, okay, just including the theta component here. And then if we just take this, okay, in a simplified way, okay, although it doesn't look simplified, but the thing is, if you have done Legendre polynomial and Bessel function, you must have come across this, okay. This actually takes some time to derive, so you can go from here to here possible, okay. So they take some time to derive, so you can look into that derivation, but we will just directly write down the equation. So it is summation L is equal to 0 to infinity. So the question is why there is a summation in this case. So what is the physical significance? So it's not that you have a single wave, you are considering a number of waves, okay. So all of these waves needs to be added. So when we say L is equal to 0 to infinity, that means we are adding up all the waves, okay, we are adding up all the waves, okay. But eventually you'll see that the case is slightly different, but we will see this is the general example expression. And then this is nothing but FLR, where FL is nothing but related with Bessel function, and PL cos theta is nothing but a Legendre polynomial, okay. Question is why polynomial? Because you see you have got a number of waves traveling in space, okay. It might be a quadratic function, it might be a function to the power of 4, 3, and so on, okay. So just to generalize the case and to consider it to be a very practical idea, a practical theory, we do use Legendre polynomial here, okay? So this is an important expression. Let's mark this as number A. And this integer L, which is something which we already know is called the angular momentum, right? This is also angular momentum. It basically represents, it is a quantum number, right? So whenever you are even doing a Bessel function or a spherical harmonic or let's say a Legendre polynomial, all of these are L values or M value you take, these are all nothing but quantum numbers. So they are going to represent the state of the wave, okay, if we are actually writing down in this term, okay. So please keep it simple, okay, don't get too confused here. So you got the integer L, which represents the number of partial waves in the partial wave equation. So we do have partial wave equations here, okay. This is basically called the partial waves. So what happens is you are analyzing a part of the wave here, okay, and then this L will represent how many partial waves are there. So for each of them L value might be different, but then in here what we say is that the angular momentum is conserved. The conservation of energy, the conservation of angular momentum plays a very important role here, okay, because if it is not conserved, that means the system has absorbed some energy. If it has absorbed some energy, the conservation laws are getting violated. That means the system has changed. So if you're disturbing the nuclei and changing it, then that is not the aim of the experiment. The aim of the experiment is what happens to the outcoming wave because of the nuclei, and that we study. So if there is no change, that means this L value will more or less be constant. Okay. So before we go to that, let me just tell you what is PL again. I think I've written it, Legendre polynomial of the order L. Okay. And then if you write down FLR square, that means you are taking a square of that. This is basically nothing but a wave function only. So this is basically the probability that a neutron of angular momentum L, okay, neutron of angular momentum L will be found at a distance r. So what does this function say? This function says, if you remember, we take just psi star and then we consider psi and then multiply them, take the integration, okay, and then based on that we get a value. This value will tell you how probable is the existence of that particular state. So the thing is, if there is a wave function, let's say FLR, and we take a square of that, okay, it says that the neutron of angular momentum L will be found at a distance r. So if it's a scattering experiment and if there is no neutron, that means we don't have that factor, okay. But then if there is a neutron, what is the probability that the neutron would be there is given by FLR square. Okay, so you can just write down this sentence for understanding. I have explained it to you. Okay, and then this is nothing but psi L is equal to e to the power I kz. I think there should be a cos theta. Okay, missed it. So cos theta is equal to nothing but summation L is equal to 0 to infinity I to the power L root over 2L plus 1 JLKR PL cos theta. Now I know that if you have not paid attention in your mathematical physics class, this might seem to be a bit tricky, but please remember this is your Bessel function. Okay, this is your Bessel function, very important. So this is the Bessel function. So I will consider that you already know this, okay, or at least remember this. So we can actually write down FLR as nothing but this particular. So this is the term we have. Okay, you can actually further simplify it. Okay, and then write it down. Okay, I think I missed a 4 pi here. Sorry, there should be a 4 pi. Okay, so it's the term. Okay, so this is FLR. So what we have is the equation with FLR PL cos theta, but then FLR is a function which is dependent on the Bessel function. So we've just written down the expansion of this. Okay, you have to check that back, and then this is your expression C. And then if you consider very large R, so what I'm saying is that there is absence of potential. So I'm saying that the R is very large. That means it is very far from the nuclei. If that is the case, this JLR will actually have an asymptotic form. Okay, it will be asymptotic in nature. That means that it will basically deviate, okay, away from a straight line. Okay, I think you know already what is an asymptote. So we have got 1 divided by kr sine of kr plus L pi by 2. So I know it's a lot of things to remember. Probably you need to remember this, probably you need to remember this, but we don't have any way out. It's like the entire MSc syllabus is clubbed together here. Okay, so please just go through and try to remember these factors. Okay, I hope I've written them correctly. But before that, this is just a note. Okay, this is also important, but then I just made sure that I just write down these points before we proceed. What it's all about partial waves. Okay, how do we analyze partial waves? Okay, so when we basically have waves with different values of orbital angular momentum, so we have got different waves. Okay, wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, because we are considering a bundle of waves coming and getting incident on the nuclei. And then if we consider that particular case, we say that each of these waves will have one angular momentum each, orbital angular momentum each, and these are referred to as nothing but the partial waves. Okay, and then how do we actually use it? Okay, so it's basically, when we talk about partial wave, it is nothing but it is a technique. Okay, it's just a technique for solving scattering problems. So if you have gone through quantum mechanics, you have seen scattering problems, different types, high energy scattering, low energy scattering, you have used Born approximation and so on, partial wave analysis and so on, right? So when we do that, we have got different technique for solving a problem based on the initial conditions. So this is also a technique for solving this scattering problem. And here what we do is we decompose, okay, we separate out each wave into its constituent angular momentum component. So if we have got a number of waves, okay, we have got a large number of waves, each of them will actually be identified by an angular momentum. We are not talking about nucleon scattering right now, in general. So it will be identified by the angular momentum, and then if we can solve for each of them by using the boundary condition, then we actually get the output, okay, or we understand the system. So this sounds very complicated, because if we have got many waves, we are going to solve for each of them, it will become very complicated, right? We have to do a lot of things. But then this thing is something which is easier in case of our partial wave analysis in terms of nucleon scattering, okay. So just get back to the topic. So we have written this equation JL, where JL is nothing but the spherical Bessel function. Now in this case, since we said that the angular momentum conservation is one of the important factors to study, okay. So as I said, let me just repeat that. If the angular momentum changes, that means there is some loss of energy. That means the nuclei or the nucleon must have absorbed some energy. That means the state would have changed sufficiently. So if the state has changed for the nucleon, that scattering experiment is not done. The scattering experiment tells that you have an incoming wave, you get an outcoming wave, you see how the outcoming wave behaves, and depending on that you analyze the nucleon. You don't want to change anything in the nucleon. So in this particular case, L does not change, okay. It does not change, it's strictly almost zero, okay. So that means the number of partial waves which we will take part will be limited in number. It will be very limited in number, okay. What happens is, even if we do a summation, we are not changing the L values, we are just adding up everything, okay. So I think this is simple. So what happens is, if we have an energy below 10 MeV, so the L can be considered to be 0. I'll make it a bit simpler here. If we have a high energy beam, okay, very high energy beam, okay, coming an incident on the nucleon, there is a chance that if the nucleon is positive, and if we are just considering this, if this is positive, okay, and let's say we are having a beam of protons and coming and hitting. So if this comes and hits, and if it is at a very high energy, the chances are that this will actually disrupt the nuclei. This is something which I don't want. I want a low energy one, and it should come and get scattered. That is more important, okay. So this is low energy, okay, and this is high energy. So if it is high, that means we are talking about a range might be greater than 10 MeV. If it is greater than 10 MeV, the chances are the state might change, okay. So if it is less than 10 MeV, L can be considered to be 0. The angular momentum can be considered to be 0. The orbital angular momentum can be considered to be 0, okay. So please understand the physical significance here. So if we just consider this L to be 0, what happens is this JLKR can get modified, okay. So we already have the equations here, okay. So if we consider L to be 0, this part will become 0, right. So this part will become 0. So if this part becomes 0, we just have sine KR divided by KR. So this is sine KR divided by KR, okay. And then we can also write it down in this way, okay. I hope all of you remember this, okay. Might be we can do it a quick run through here. So this is the equation, right. This is the equation we have. So can we just do a very fast calculation here? So let's do it. Let's say e to the power IKR, right? So I hope you remember this. E to the power IX is equal to cos x plus I sin x, right? So can we just change it here? Yes, we can. So e to the power IKR can be written as cos of KR plus I sin KR, right? So this is simple. And then we can actually do is, there is a minus sign, minus, and then e to the power minus IKR can be written as cos of KR minus I sin KR, right, divided by, of course, sorry, okay, तो practice करना पड़ेगा, okay. So divided by, okay, so this is divided by, and this is 2IKR, okay. Oh, sorry, yeah, 2IKR, this is correct. So you see here, this cos kr and this cos kr will get cancelled. This minus 1 and this will plus, this will become 2i. So this is 2i sine kr divided by 2i kr. So then this 2i gets cancelled. What we get is sine kr by r kr. So you get sine kr by kr. Okay. So this is not complicated. This is simple, but we have to just use this. Okay. So please make sure that these equations and all these are known to you. Okay. Comes as more of basic maths. And what does this represent actually? We have got two waves here. One is e to the power I kr and one is e to the power minus I kr. What these two waves represent? So one of them represents the incoming part and the other represents the outgoing part. Okay, so that means the entire information of the wave is actually here in this equation itself. This is the beauty of using mathematical physics and Bessel function. Okay, so this e to the power I minus I kr will represent the incoming spherical wave. Okay, it represents this, and then e to the power I kr will represent the outgoing spherical waves. Okay, we are going to analyze it further, and this is important and definitely a part of a descriptive question. Okay, so please pay attention. So what happens is, if there is no scattering potential, that means there is no v naught. Okay, there is no v naught. Okay, there is no I think we represented it by v naught again and again. So there is no v naught. The incident plane wave, so we are basically giving the incident plane wave, and if from wave theory we remember, it will actually behave as if it were made up of two spherical waves, one incoming and one outgoing. So you see, the incoming wave and the outgoing going wave are a part of the same plane wave. So that means that plane wave can be divided into an incoming part and an outgoing part. Okay, so it behaves as if, okay, we are just saying that it will behave as if it has got two parts, one incoming part and the outgoing part. So this is done, and this is a point where we say that there is no potential, but then that is not the case. We actually want a potential. Okay, the question is, what happens when the potential comes into the picture? Now what we do is, the potential is switched on. Okay, so the potential is switched on, so we have v naught now, and then we also say that it has got a certain region within which its effect can be realized. If we go at a larger distance, we say that the potential is negligible. Okay, so it does not affect the incoming wave at distances larger than that of the nuclear force. Okay, so we already know about cross section, and that's why we studied that cross section doesn't mean only the area of the nucleus. Okay, it means a region around which the effect can be felt. Okay, it's substantial. Okay, so we say that this is the region. So when the potential is switched on, what happens is there will be a scattering. Okay, there will be a scattering, and then there will be a phase shift. The question is, what is phase shift? I think all of us know it, but still, if you talk about waves, if you talk about let's say electronics, there is always a phase shift. Okay, there is always a change. Whenever there is an incoming wave and is going outwards, there is a change in its angle. Okay, and that angle is nothing but a phase shift. So whenever you say there is an incoming wave of cos kx and the outgoing wave is cos kx plus delta, the delta will represent the phase shift. Okay, so definitely there is a phase shift. So this is how we analyze it mathematically. It is nothing new, but the thing is, we have not used it for some practical ideas such as the scattering example, and that's why sometimes it becomes a bit confusing. Okay, so if we consider the phase shift example, we can actually say that that equation, what was our equation again? This equation, right? This equation, e to the power I kr minus e to the power minus I kr divided by 2I kr. So this is the incoming wave. So incoming wave won't have any phase shift, right? Because this is the incoming wave. But as soon as it comes, hits the nuclei, there is a phase shift. So the phase shift will be here. Here we will have delta naught. Obvious, I think this is quite logical. So we'll have a phase shift at the outgoing wave. So let's look into it. So let's represent the outgoing wave. So outgoing wave, there is a phase shift of 2 delta, kr plus 2 delta. Okay. Well, you might ask that why 2 delta, why not delta only? You can do it, not a problem. But then later on, you will see that this helps to do a better maths. Okay, it becomes a bit easy to calculate. Okay. Anyway, these are just results. You can always use delta, and then probably we'll have a different kind of approach here, okay, but we're just keeping it simple. So I kr plus 2 delta minus e to the power I minus I kr, this is the incoming part, okay, incoming part. I'll just write down I here, and this is the outgoing. So outgoing is O. So outgoing will have a phase shift divided by 2I kr. So then what we do is we can actually take e to the power I delta naught common, okay. This I is also multiplied here. So from here we have taken out one I delta naught. So only one I delta naught remains. So one I delta naught will remain here. And here we don't have any I delta naught. So we need to subtract it. So we've just added this. So if we add this, take this minus sign inside, this is minus I delta naught plus I delta naught, this will get cancelled. You can expand and check this and this are the same, okay, this and this are the same, okay. So we do it, okay, for ease of calculation. I hope you understand it, because if you take this and this together and then you have got e to the power I x, you can use the formula cos x plus I sin x to simplify the equation. So this equation will get simplified, only that is the reason we are doing it, okay. So we do that, and here also you can see that if I don't take 2 delta naught, I just take delta naught, then I have to write it down here as delta naught divided by 2, okay. So why to complicate things, you just write down 2 delta naught, just a value we can always replace when we do practical examples. So then what happens is we can just expand this. So you see this cos e to the power ix is cos x plus I sin x. So this plus this minus cos x plus I sin x. So again this minus, I've opened the bracket, so minus will be here. So this will get cancelled with this, okay. But then this will get cancelled with this, and then the sine term remains, okay. I think this is clear to you. The sine term remains. So if we have the sine term, I sin kr plus, okay, sorry, I think I made a mistake here, this will be a plus here, of course, okay, because this is minus I, right. So if we take the example, this will be cos x minus I sin x, and if you open the bracket, this will become plus, minus and minus plus. So this is plus, this is plus, this will become twice, okay. So if we go to the next slide, 2I sine of kr divided by delta naught, 2I gets cancelled, and then we have got e to the power I delta naught sine of kr plus delta naught divided by kr. So this is the relation we have, okay, and this is the relation for what? This is the relation of psi naught, okay. So if we consider this, don't get confused, psi naught is nothing but given by the Bessel function. Bessel function also talks about the wave function, okay. So it is nothing but we are representing it as psi naught, so that we are not jumbling up with so many terms. So just writing down it psi naught, because psi naught is nothing but the wave, and it has got all the information about the incoming and the outgoing wave. So we have just written what is psi naught here. So we have found out this relation. So this is where we stop, okay, but this is not the end of the derivation. In the next class, that is Monday, we are going to end this derivation, okay, and then probably we'll go to something which is called the phase shift calculation. So we are going to find out what is delta naught. That's a different topic. So if this is a descriptive question of 8 marks, your derivation will start from here, okay. I think I've written it already. Yeah. So basically your derivation will start from here.